He texted you every day for 2 weeks. He called you beautiful. He made plans. And then, nothing, radio silence, and you're sitting there wondering what the hell just happened. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly why men do this, and more importantly, what it means about you. Look, I need you to understand something right now before we go any further. This isn't about male bashing. This isn't about making excuses for bad behavior either. This is about understanding the male psychology so deeply that you never have to lose sleep over this pattern again. Because here's what I know after coaching thousands of women through this exact situation. You're not crazy. You didn't imagine the connection, and no, you didn't do anything wrong. But there is something going on in his head that you need to understand. And when you get this, when you really get this, it changes everything, not just with him, but with how you show up in dating from this point forward. My name is Matthew Hussey, and for the last 15 years I've dedicated my life to understanding human attraction, connection, and why we do the things we do in relationships. And this pattern, this specific pattern of a guy showing intense interest and then disappearing, this is one of the most painful and confusing experiences you can have in modern dating. So let's break it down. Let's go deep, and let's make sure this is the last time you ever have to Google, "Why did he ghost me?" at 2 in the morning. Let me paint you a picture. You meet him. Maybe it's on an app. Maybe it's through friends. Maybe you locked eyes across a coffee shop like some kind of calm moment. Doesn't matter. What matters is what happens next. He's attentive. He's asking questions. He wants to know about your childhood, your dreams, what makes you laugh. He's texting you good morning. He's double texting when you don't respond fast enough. He's suggesting date ideas for next month. He's introducing you to his sense of humor, his favorite music, his way of seeing the world. And you're thinking, okay, this is different. This guy is actually interested. This guy is actually putting in effort. And you start to let your guard down. You start to invest. You start to imagine what this could become. And then it shifts, subtle at first. The texts get a little slower. The enthusiasm dims just slightly. He's still responding, but there's something missing. The spark feels like it's flickering, and then one day it just stops. He's gone. No explanation, no warning, just absence. And you're left holding your phone like it's a Ouija board trying to communicate with the dead. You scroll back through the messages looking for clues. You replay every conversation in your head. You think, what did I say? What did I do? Was I too available? Not available enough? Too intense? Not intense enough? Did I misread everything? And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that you start to question your own perception of reality. Because he was interested, you know he was, you didn't make that up. So what happened? Let me tell you what didn't happen. You didn't suddenly become less attractive. You didn't say some magic wrong thing that turned him off. You didn't scare him away by being yourself. None of that is what happened here. What happened is something much more fundamental about how men operate in the early stages of dating. And to understand it, we need to talk about the difference between interest and investment. Here's what most women don't realize. Interest is cheap. Interest costs nothing. Interest is a guy swiping right. Interest is a guy sending you a funny meme. Interest is a guy saying, "Hey, beautiful," at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Interest is easy. Interest is abundant. Interest means I like what I see right now in this moment with zero stakes and zero cost to my life. Investment is different. Investment is expensive. Investment requires sacrifice. Investment means I'm choosing you over other options. Investment means I'm making space for you in my life. Investment means I'm willing to be inconvenienced. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to risk something real. And here's the gap where everything falls apart. A lot of men will show you interest without ever intending to invest. not because they're evil, not because they're players, but because they genuinely don't know the difference themselves. Let me say that again. Most men don't even realize they're doing this. They feel the interest is real, the attraction is real, the enjoyment of your company is real, but they haven't asked themselves the deeper question: am I willing to invest? Think about it like this. You can be interested in a beautiful vacation destination. You can look at the pictures. You can read about it. You can tell your friends how amazing it looks. You can even start planning in your head what you do there. But until you book the ticket, until you request the time off work, until you pack your bags, you're not invested, you're just interested, and the moment something easier or more convenient comes along, or the moment the planning starts to feel like work, you drift away. It doesn't mean the destination became less beautiful. It means you were never truly invested in going there. This is what's happening with him. He was interested in you, genuinely interested. But when it came time to invest, when it came time to make room, to be consistent, to show up even when it wasn't convenient, he wasn't ready, or he wasn't willing, or he realized he had other priorities. And instead of saying that, instead of being honest, he just faded, because that's easier, that's always easier. Now let me be clear about something. This doesn't make it okay. This doesn't excuse the behavior. Ghosting is cowardly. Disappearing without explanation is immature. You deserve better than that, but understanding why he did it is power, because when you understand this distinction between interest and investment, you stop taking the disappearance personally, you stop thinking something is wrong with you, and you start recognizing the pattern much earlier, so you don't waste months on someone who was never planning to invest in the first place. But there's another layer we need to talk about. And this one is going to sting a little because it's going to reveal something uncomfortable about male psychology. Ready? Here it is. Some men pursue you just to know they can have you. Let that sink in. The chase itself is the reward. The validation of your interest is the goal, not the relationship, not the connection, the ego boost. I want you to imagine for a second you're playing a video game. You're working your way through levels. You're solving puzzles, you're defeating enemies, you're completely engaged, and then you beat the game, you see the final screen, you win. What happens next? You lose interest. You put the controller down. The game was fun while it was challenging, but once you won, once you proved you could do it, the motivation disappears. Now, I'm not saying women are video games. Stay with me. What I'm saying is that for some men, the early stages of dating trigger the exact same reward system in their brain. The uncertainty makes it exciting. The challenge makes it engaging. Your responses give him dopamine hits. Your interest validates him. And every step forward, every time you laugh at his joke, every time you agree to see him again, every time you open up a little more, it's reinforcing this loop. He's winning, he's succeeding, he's proving to himself that he's desirable, and then one of two things happens. Either he actually gets you, meaning you make it clear you're interested, you're available, you like him, and suddenly the game is over. The challenge is gone, the validation is received, mission accomplished, or, and this is even more common, he never intended to actually date you seriously in the first place, he just wanted to know that he could. He wanted to feel desired, he wanted to feel like he still had it, and you gave him that, and once he got it, he moved on. I know this is painful to hear. I know it feels gross and manipulative, and in many cases it is. But here's the thing you need to understand. Most guys doing this aren't sitting there twirling their mustaches like villains. They're not thinking, how can I hurt her today? They're operating on instinct. They're following what feels good in the moment. They're chasing the feeling of being wanted without thinking about the cost to you. It's selfish, it's immature, but it's not always malicious. And this is why you have to protect yourself. Not by building walls, not by playing games, but by watching for investment, not just interest. Does he make plans in advance? Does he follow through? Does he show up when it's inconvenient? Does he prioritize you when it costs him something? Those are the questions that matter. Let me give you a real example. I was coaching a woman named Sarah last year. She met a guy named Tom. Tom was everything on paper: successful, charming, great texter. They went on 3 dates over 2 weeks. Every date was amazing. Long conversations, physical chemistry, real laughter. He told her he loved how easy she was to talk to. He said he hadn't felt this way in years. He even mentioned a concert happening in 6 weeks and said we should go to that. She was sold. She thought, this is it. This is the guy. And then after their 3rd date, he just stopped responding. Not entirely. He'd reply eventually, but the energy was gone. The initiation was gone. She'd text him. He'd respond 8 hours later with something bland. She tried to make plans. He was suddenly busy. And she was devastated. She thought she'd done something wrong, but here's what I told her. Tom was interested. Tom enjoyed your company. Tom probably even meant what he said in those moments. But Tom was never invested. Tom was enjoying the validation of having a beautiful, intelligent woman interested in him. And when the reality of actually dating you, actually making space for you, actually being consistent with you started to set in, he bailed. Because here's the truth about the male validation loop. It's addictive for men who are insecure, men who need external proof of their worth, men who haven't done the internal work to feel confident without female attention. And those men will give you all the signs of interest while never having any intention of investment. They're not looking for a relationship. They're looking for evidence that they're still desirable. And you were that evidence. Now, not every disappearing act is about ego and validation. Sometimes it's about fear, real, genuine, paralyzing fear. And this is the version that's hardest to spot because it looks identical to interest. In fact, it often comes with even more interest than the validation. Seekers. These are the guys who come on strong, really strong. They're texting you constantly. They're making big plans. They're talking about the future. They're vulnerable. They're open. They're saying things like, I've never felt this way before, or you're different from anyone I've met. And then they vanish completely, suddenly, with no warning. And you're left thinking, how does someone go from that level of intensity to nothing? What changed? Did I do something? Did they meet someone else? The answer is usually much simpler and much sadder than you think. They got scared. Let me explain how this works. Some men, especially men who have been hurt before, have a terrible habit of future pacing. They meet you. They feel the chemistry. They feel the potential. And instead of staying present, instead of taking it slow, they project into the future. They start imagining what a relationship with you would look like, and sometimes that image is beautiful. They see happiness, partnership, love. But other times, that image triggers every fear they have: fear of losing themselves, fear of being hurt again, fear of commitment, fear of not being enough, fear of repeating past mistakes, fear of the relationship ending and having to go through that pain again. And the cruel irony is that the more they like you, the more scared they become, because the stakes are higher. You actually matter. You're not just a distraction. You're not just filling time. You're someone they could actually fall for. And that terrifies them. So what do? They run. Not because you did anything wrong. Not because they stopped liking you, but because the feeling became too big, too fast, and they don't have the emotional tools to handle it. And instead of communicating that, instead of saying, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need to slow down, they ghost. because that feels safer, that feels like control, that feels like protection. I had a client named Michael who did exactly this. He met a woman named Rachel. Everything was perfect. They talked for hours. They had the same values. The chemistry was insane. He told me she was everything he'd been looking for. And then, after about 3 weeks, he stopped texting her. Just stopped. When I asked him why, he said, "I don't know, man, I just freaked out. I started thinking about what if this gets serious? What if I mess it up like I did with my ex? What if she realizes I'm not who she thinks I am? What if I disappoint her and I couldn't handle those thoughts, so I just backed away?" And notice what he said there. None of it was about Rachel. She didn't do anything. She was still the amazing person he was attracted to, but his own fear, his own insecurity, his own unresolved trauma from his past relationship, all of that became louder than his interest in her. And he chose to protect himself rather than risk being vulnerable. Now, does this excuse his behavior? Absolutely not. He should have communicated. He should have been honest. He should have given her the respect of an explanation. But does it help you understand what happened? Yes, because it shifts the narrative from what's wrong with me to what's going on with him. And that shift is everything. Here's how you spot the difference between a guy who's seeking validation and a guy who's afraid. The validation seeker was never that vulnerable. He kept things surface level. He complimented your looks more than your character. He talked about fun and excitement, but never about real connection. The guy who's afraid was vulnerable, maybe too vulnerable too soon. He opened up about his past. He talked about his fears. He let you see the real him, and then he panicked and ran because that level of openness felt too exposed. Both will disappear, both will leave you confused, but understanding which one you're dealing with helps you process what happened. The validation seeker was never yours to lose. The guy who's afraid might come back when he's ready, but you shouldn't wait for him. Because a man who runs when things get real isn't ready for what you're offering, no matter how much he likes you. All right, we need to talk about the elephant in the room: modern dating, apps, abundance. The paradox of choice. Because here's an uncomfortable truth. Some men disappear simply because they're talking to multiple people, and someone else became more convenient, more available, or more exciting in that particular moment. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying this because you need to understand the landscape. Dating apps have fundamentally changed how men approach early stage dating. 20 years ago, if you met someone and there was chemistry, you pursued that. You invested. You saw where it went, because meeting someone you actually liked was rare. It took effort, so when it happened, you valued it. Now, now a guy can have 5 conversations happening simultaneously, and all 5 women might be great, all 5 might have potential, but he's not investing in any of them. He's sampling, he's exploring, he's keeping his options open, and here's what happens. You might be having amazing conversations. You might have great dates. You might feel like something real is building, but in his mind, he's still shopping. He's still seeing what else is out there. And the moment someone who seems shinier, newer, more exciting comes along, his attention shifts. Not because you're not good enough, not because the connection wasn't real, but because he's not in investment mode. He's in exploration mode, and the cruelest part, he might come back. You know why? Because the shiny new person didn't work out, or she rejected him, or he realized the grass wasn't greener, and suddenly he remembers you. He remembers how good the conversations were. He remembers the chemistry. And he reaches out like nothing happened. "Hey, stranger, how have you been?" And you're supposed to just forget that he vanished, that he made you feel disposable, that he chose someone else. This is the reality of modern dating for a lot of men. They're treating human connection like a Netflix queue. If they're not immediately captivated by the first episode, they move on to the next show. They don't give anything time to develop. They don't invest in the slow burn. They want instant chemistry, instant excitement, instant certainty, and when they don't get that, or when something more instantly gratifying appears, they're gone. So, what do you do with this information? You stop being available to men who are treating you like an option. You stop entertaining the "hey stranger" text after weeks of silence. You stop accepting breadcrumbs from men who only reach out when they're bored or when their other options fell through. You demand consistency, you demand investment, and you're willing to walk away from anyone who can't give you that. I know it's hard. I know you want to believe he's different. I know you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But here's what I've learned coaching thousands of women through this. The men who are serious about you don't make you feel confused. They don't leave you wondering where you stand. They don't disappear and reappear based on their mood or their options. They're consistent, they're clear, they're invested, and anything less than that isn't worth your time. Now let's talk about the most important part of all of this. What does his disappearance mean about you? And I'm going to tell you something you might not want to hear. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. His inability to invest, his fear, his validation, seeking his option, shopping, none of that is a reflection of your worth. None of that is evidence that you're not enough. None of that means you did something wrong. But here's what I see happen all the time. A guy disappears and the woman immediately turns it inward. She starts picking herself apart. She thinks maybe I was too much. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I didn't show enough interest. Maybe I should have slept with him. Maybe I shouldn't have slept with him. Maybe I'm not pretty enough, not interesting enough, not worth staying for. Stop right there. Because that story you're telling yourself, that story where you're the problem, that's not based on reality. That's based on fear. That's based on the lies we've been told about our worth being tied to male attention and approval. And I need you to reject that story completely. Here's the truth. You could be the most beautiful, intelligent, funny, kind, successful woman in the world, and some men will still disappear. You know why? Because his behavior is about him, his readiness, his maturity, his emotional availability, his intentions, his character. You can't control any of that. You can only control how you respond to it, and the powerful response is this. You don't chase, you don't beg for an explanation. You don't try to convince him of your worth. You simply note the information he's giving you through his behavior, and you decide you deserve better. Because you do. You deserve a man who doesn't just show interest. You deserve a man who invests. You deserve a man who doesn't run when things get real. You deserve a man who communicates when he's scared instead of disappearing. You deserve a man who sees you as the priority, not as one of many options. And here's the shift that changes everything. When you truly believe that, when you truly know your worth isn't dependent on whether some guy chooses to stay or go, you show up differently in dating. You're not anxious, you're not seeking validation, you're not trying to prove yourself. You're simply being yourself and watching to see if he's capable of matching your investment. And the moment he's not, the moment he starts to fade, you don't panic. You don't chase, you just let him go, because you know someone who wants to be in your life will act like it. So let's get practical. What do you actually do when a guy starts to pull away, when you feel the energy shifting? When you sense he's about to disappear, first you stop overcompensating. You don't start texting more to try to revive his interest. You don't suggest plans to try to lock him in. You don't become more available to make it easier for him. All of that communicates one thing. You're willing to do the work he's not doing, and that never works. Instead, you match his energy, not as a game, not as a strategy, but as a reflection of reality. If he's pulling back, you give him space. If he's not initiating, you stop initiating. If he's being inconsistent, you redirect your attention to people who are consistent. You essentially let his behavior tell you everything you need to know without making it a whole dramatic thing. Second, you ask yourself one question: am I seeing investment or just interest? Look at his actions, not his words, not his compliments, not his promises, his actions. Is he making real plans? Is he following through? Is he showing up consistently? Is he prioritizing you even when it's inconvenient? If the answer is no, you already know what you're dealing with. And you can choose to walk away with your dignity intact instead of waiting around for him to officially ghost you. Third, if you want closure, you can ask for it, but you have to be prepared for the reality that you might not get it. You can send one message, something simple. Something like, hey, I've noticed your energy has shifted and I'm getting the sense you're not as interested in pursuing this anymore. I just want to check in and see where you're at because I'd rather know than guess. Notice the tone there. You're not accusing. You're not emotional. You're not begging. You're simply asking for clarity like the adult you are. And if he doesn't respond, or if he gives you some vague nonsense about being busy, that is your answer, and you move on. Fourth, and this is the most important one, you focus on yourself. You get back to your life, your friends, your hobbies, your goals, your happiness, because here's what I know for sure. A man who disappears on you is not the man who's going to make you happy long term. He's not the one. He's just a guy who showed interest but couldn't follow through. And you don't build a life with someone like that. You don't lose sleep over someone like that. You simply thank him for showing you who he is early, and you keep moving. And finally, you remember this: every man who disappears is making room for the man who won't. Every time you let go of someone who isn't investing, you're creating space for someone who will. So stop seeing the disappearance as rejection. Start seeing it as redirection. Start seeing it as protection. Start seeing it as the universe or God or whatever you believe in clearing out the wrong person so the right person can find you. Look, I get it. This hurts. It's confusing. It's frustrating. It makes you question everything. But I need you to hear me on this. His disappearance is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of his readiness, his character, his emotional availability. And the sooner you internalize that, the sooner you stop giving away your power to men who are never going to cherish it anyway. You are not too much. You are not enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. And the right man, the man who's ready, the man who's emotionally available, the man who's actually looking for a real connection, that man is going to see you and he's going to stay. He's not going to play games. He's not going to fade away. He's not going to leave you wondering where you stand. He's going to be clear. He's going to be consistent. He's going to invest. And until that man shows up, you protect your peace. You protect your energy. You protect your heart, not by shutting down, not by becoming cynical, but by having standards, by refusing to settle for interest when you deserve investment, by walking away from anyone who makes you feel confused, anxious, or uncertain about where you stand. Because you deserve better than that. You've always deserved better than that. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me what you're struggling with. I read these comments and I use them to create more content that actually helps. And if you want more, check out my coaching programs. Come to one of my retreats. Let's do this work together, because you don't have to figure this out alone. I'll see you in the next one.